Hello and welcome back to another video on the channel. I wanted to go over some transfer stuff today. There's been a little bit of news in the last week or so, discussing a few names, clearly looking at some specific areas to improve this squad. And it's hard to tell sometimes if these names are genuine or if it's just kind of transfer rumours or what. So we're going to go over them anyway, have a little bit of a deeper look if we can, and then also get to some of your questions that I asked for a week or so ago that I said I'd answer for you. So we'll start off with the names real quick. So first one that's been kind of around for about a week or so is Keane from Wigan. This is a bit of an interesting one. I think this is kind of divided opinion on how good or how useful the sign this will be for us, being the fact he's about to turn 29. He's done well in League One last season, top goal scorer, but with a jump in standard, playing for a team that's potentially or hopefully fighting for promotion. Is it going to be a good fit? Lots of questions about this one, but I hadn't watched Keane properly, to be honest with you, for some time. But I went and looked at kind of his career of late, especially last season. Obviously, a record goal scoring season, 426 goals in League One, which is obviously very impressive. And it was an interesting one actually, a little bit different than what I thought. He played from a little bit deeper. His starting position was quite deep, obviously very dominant in the air, good goal threat, and he was an interesting one. So this is coming from, there's a few numerous sources, but this one here is from the Sun. But there's a few clubs interested in Keane supposedly. But just kind of looking at some of his rankings real quick here. Obviously you see top goal scorer stands out, impressive, and then obviously the aerial ability was something which Keane was known for as being strong in the air. But last season, most goals in League One from his head, 11, which is a lot, and also from corners as well, five goals from corners. Set pieces sign we've not been that effective with. Most of that's been down to delivery, but it would be nice to add some aerial threat inside there as well. But for me, the real interesting thing with Keane was just how he kind of started from the attack and how he played from a little bit deeper. His use of the ball was better than I thought it was. He actually he wasn't wasteful in possession. He actually was able to link play a little bit. He got 6 assists last year as well, so he was able to contribute in that sense. But in the box, late runs into the box could be a real threat. I can see why Rob Edwards would be looking at this sort of player, especially when you are playing with that 3-5-2 system, a little bit slower and build up at times. You might want someone to come back in, drop in, and then when you are attacking, able to make those later runs into the box. And with the size of Keane and the way he can dominate in the air as well, if he is already in the box, he is a little bit stagnant, he can still beat his man. So I like the variety there. I can see where that interest comes from. He looks like he's had a good year, definitely his best year so far, and 29, it's not perfect, it's not a long-term investment, but could he be a good addition to the team? That's really the question. I think where opinion is divided on Keane often is down to kind of the context of the signing. If he is the guy brought in to be a starter and he's the guy, then maybe you feel less good. But what if he's brought in as well as someone else, another incoming, perhaps bolstering that front line, which is starting to look a little thin. Obviously with the players that we expect to leave, we might need to add one or two. And if he was one of two rather than just the one, then I think that we could feel relatively positive. As I said, he's a threat, and we're going to need goal threat, and he's someone that can contribute. And I think he would fit. He would fit what Rob Edwards likes to do. We've talked about this in the last video as well, and on the Watford Buzz podcast, I believe as well, that we want, I think, in my opinion, we need to be looking for someone that can be a bit of a mobile target man. Is Keane a target man? Not necessarily, but he has got mobility. He can play in different areas of the pitch, which is something we need to be looking for. We have to have some movement and the ability to kind of create space in a few different areas, something we're maybe not used to doing. Not playing in that 3 at the back system, but I think now we are changing. It has to be a priority to find players that can play in some different areas. And I think Keane, whilst on the surface might not be the most appealing, I do think there is some merit to it. And if the deal was, we're talking about £1 million or so, it's pretty favourable. It's a relatively low risk. We've taken much bigger risks in the past. I don't think it would be a terrible move by any means, as long as I said, the context is there and we are bringing him perhaps to help supplement rather than kind of throwing everything on Keane to be the kind of main focal point for us. But remember, we're playing a 2-striker system, so they're most likely anyway. So we're going to have a little bit of variety in those 4 positions, and he could be a component. So I wouldn't write him off as a bad deal by any means. he's someone that I think personally can contribute. As you see, like his starting positions and just the areas he's covering during the games. This is through. Let's make sure we're going through League One. He plays deep, and he's occupying those areas, and I think that's important for us. I think we want to see that, and his goal return speaks for itself. So I believe only 3 of the goals out of the 26 are from penalties as well. I'll just double check that for us real quick. So 3 goals from penalties, and the rest he's got from open play, and there's a lot of kind of around the edge of the box stuff. A lot of in the 6-yard box stuff, headers and being dominant in the air, set pieces, of course, as we saw, kind of top scorer from set pieces, 11 headed goals, lots of aerial ability there, and also some nice play around the edge of the box too. There are some interesting goals, nice variety. I like what I see there, as well as some of the other things we see from open play, and a little bit kind of more in possession too. There's some promise, so I wouldn't write that one off. It's obviously not a definite; it's still a rumor, but let's see where that one goes. Next one, this is one that we've heard a little bit about recently, last few days. Lucas Joao, Reading play. If you've watched the Championship over the last few years, you'll be familiar with Joao. He's been very, very good for Reading. Had a couple of dry spells, but for the most part, he's been quite important in any positives that have happened at Reading Football Club in recent years. And coming into the last year of his contract, he's going to be available for a relatively low fee. Again, they're probably looking at a couple million here. In my opinion, it's pretty low risk, especially for a team that's coming down with parachute payments. We know how vital they are, how important they are, and what a difference they can make. You just look at the teams that have been going up and down the last few years. Oftentimes, not in all cases, of course, but oftentimes the parachute payment teams have had that ability to go back up. So Joao, I think, is someone that does fit. Again, I think he might be a better fit than Will Keane in terms of what we want from, or in terms of what Edwards would most likely want. He has got the mobility, big framed guy. He gets into the box well. He can shoot from anywhere. He's quite effective. He's not always the most. He's going to miss some chances, but he's got a powerful strike and he can get the ball on target. And he's someone that is going to score you goals. I think he'll be a good acquisition for us. Obviously, the question that always comes in when you have a player that's available like this for Watford is: are we going to compete with the clubs that are offering him? Perhaps bigger wages, perhaps bigger signing bonuses, and also, in this case too, with there being another transfer fee involved, are we going to outpay those around? Because I'm sure teams around us in the league, teams that have gone down with us, the likes of Burnley, etc., could well be looking at Joao as well as other Championship clubs, and perhaps clubs abroad as well. He's definitely someone that's going to be in demand, and are we going to kind of put ourselves out there and compete for this player? Remains to be seen, but I think it would be a useful one. He's a different sort of striker than what we have, and I think we have to be looking around these areas. Now, these things might be rumours. They might be completely made up, who knows? But if we try and look for a pattern here, they're two similar, different, but in some ways similar sorts of players that we're talking about here. Excuse that. In terms of their kind of play style and what they bring to this team. So, maybe there is some truth in some of these targets we're looking at. Perhaps they're not as advanced as has been suggested here, but they're players that could potentially be in mind for the recruitment team. And I think if it's another indication, I'd say it does line up a little bit of what we'd be expecting from Rob Edwards too, should he have some input in these decisions. So that's an interesting one to keep an eye on. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on both of these kind of deals over the next few weeks, if anything materialises or not. But hopefully we will see something transpire in the forward area relatively soon. We want to get things done a little bit quicker. Obviously, short turnaround this season in the off-season, and with a new head coach coming in, we want to give him a full pre-season, and that might include having the players in there nice and early as well. So hopefully we'll see more on that. Now, in the other direction, there's been some news or a report about Philip Zinkernagel, obviously Nottingham Forest. Congratulations on the promotion, but that does leave Zinkernagel's future a little bit up in the air. There are some question marks anyway, but with them being promoted, you'd expect he'd want to be part of Forest's squad next season should they want to facilitate or look to facilitate a deal for him. However, I think that there's a good chance that Watford and in turn Rob Edwards will be interested in keeping him around. 2 back-to-back promotions. He's been a bit part player for us when he arrived in January. Maybe a bit part's a little bit harsh. He played quite a few games actually, but he wasn't a nailed-on starter by any means, and he wasn't always playing in his favoured position at the time. But this season, he's been really useful for Forest, and he's shown what he can do. But will Forest get to the position perhaps where they're promoted and now they think, okay, the loan spell's ended, should we reinvest and look for someone we're more confident about playing first team Premier League football? We don't really know, but the reported fee, according to Mirror Football, so again, take it with a pinch of salt, but valued at $2 million by Watford, according to Mirror Football. Now, I think that's unlikely. I don't see a player that's played at the level that Zinkernagel has. Even if there's some inconsistency there, and he's maybe not kind of blown up the league or anything, but $2 million is still relatively low for a player that has 4 or so years left in his contract for us. We're going to want to keep him most likely, and if he wants to be playing for us, he wants to stay. So $2 million, I don't think is going to be much. It's not going to be enough to pry him away from us in my mind. So this seems a little bit kind of misjudged by the Mirror here. It doesn't seem to be any legitimate information that's been given there because, frankly, I don't think that's realistic. Now, again, Zinkernagel's been someone that's divided opinion. So, some might be happy with Zinkernagel leaving. Personally, I'd still like to see him involved. I'd like to see what he could offer next year, and I think he'd be a useful player. Whether that's a starter or a rotation, kind of more squad-based player, I think he has something to offer. I think we need to give Rob Edwards the tools that he needs/wants in this situation. I think we have to allow him the opportunity to do that. So if you have someone on the books that can contribute, I think even if you take a little bit of a loss in the future, I think it's worth doing at this point, this transitional phase. I think it's worth keeping him around, having a look at him, and deciding from there. So I think that's one we wouldn't really, personally, I wouldn't like to see happen too much. So that's kind of really the most current news. There have been a few little bits and pieces elsewhere about some links and some soft links and players going away. There's talk of Joao Pedro having some interest, but nothing's really materialised. It seems that the club don't want to sell with Joao Pedro in particular. It looks like he's going to be here next year. There's been reports that he's spoken to his agents, and his agents have spoken with the club, and there's an agreement and understanding that he'll be with us next season. So at the moment, things stand, it looks like he's going to be with us, and that's a positive, and it helps reinforce the kind of idea we had going into this pre-season of how we hopefully will be looking to set up and who potentially will be looking to build around. It's promising in my opinion. But in terms of news, that's pretty much it for now. As things come out, especially if things actually start to become confirmed and things heat up a little bit, we'll be sure to cover it, of course. But for now, that's kind of the main news. So we're going to move on to some questions now, which I asked for last week, I believe. So we've got questions here. We'll just go through, real quick. I won't take too much of your time today. So John, what are the top 3 guiding principles we should be following for successful recruitment? So, this is obviously preference. It kind of all changes and depends based on opinion. But for me, I think firstly, it's kind of relevant to Watford in particular. I think the first one is collaboration. When I say collaboration, I mean collaboration between departments. I think we've got to be relying on that solid scouting network we have. We claim to have, how much of that is still being used and as much as it used to be is kind of up for debate and questioned. But combine that data analytics that we have a small department at the club, hopefully trying to grow, but using those analysts as a component to our recruitment strategy. Obviously, we have links to agents. We know that one in particular very prominent. But look, these are all individual things. We have to combine them to get the broadest spectrum we can for our recruitment. And you have to have these offsetting departments that kind of work together to find the positives, the pros, the cons, and give a full assessment. Do your proper due diligence, because these. Oftentimes with recruitment, it's not about just finding a player, it's about fully assessing them. And to do so, you have to look at it from every angle, and having all these different departments looking is the only way to get the clearest picture possible when deciding on who to bring in, who to sell, and who to keep. These are all important principles there. So for me, collaborating the departments, which is something we've struggled with previously, have been too segmented, relying on one more than the other too heavily, and it's made our recruitment a little bit disjointed. So that'd be the first one. Secondly, I think you got to go for fit. That would be my second one, team fit. Rather than saying, this player's available for a good fee, or he's listed below value right now. We might be able to get him in. He's coming off the back of an injury. He's had some bad form. We think he'd do better here. Value is good, of course. We all want to look for value, but if you're doing it for the sake of value, it loses its worth. And we've done that too many times. It worked on occasion, especially kind of the early years of that Premier League kind of run, that campaign we had. There were times where that kind of value finding worked, especially when we're trying to still develop our style. Perhaps you can integrate things a little bit quicker and find a way. But now, if we are trying to really change as a club and transition into something with a little bit more of a structure and a plan and identity, I think you have to start that process with your recruitment. It has to be something we see. We've got to look for that fit, and we've got to look for what fits this Rob Edwards team, and then hopefully we take the same approach with coaches too. Should Rob Edwards leave, at some point in the future, we want to see someone coming in that fits the team we have already and fits the squad we have by having that recruitment fit. And that goes into my next point, or the next principle we'll go with, and that's consistency, and that's just keeping those principles in line and making sure you stick to it. You have to trust the process. You have the plan, you stick to it, and you have to work through those issues that may arise. And it may mean you miss out on a few targets, or you miss out on some valued targets, or you might have to overpay in certain situations just a little bit to find the player that fits the team. But sticking to it, being consistent, and I think that's how we progress and how we move forward with our recruitment teams. I think there are elements, there are factors at play there which do favour us, and I think we have to kind of make the most of them. So yeah, that would be my 3 points. From League One, who are the best players we should aim for in the positions that we have previously mentioned? We need centre backs, right wing backs, centre mid striker that would fit a 3-5-2. So this is the thing. There's quite a few positions here, which is they're all very good, good points raised, good positions raised by Matt. Areas we have to address, and I think we have to do again relatively quickly. So, in terms of individual positions and players, I made a quick little list of a couple from. I just realised now that it says Championship and League One, but I looked through League One. There's a couple names that many of you might have heard of already, but we'll go over them real quick anyway. So the first one, I'd say Wes Harding from Rotherham. Might be a bit of a step up. He's a centre-back, 25 years old. The thing I like about him is he's able to play in a wide centre-back position. He's able to play at right-back even. He's got that up-and-down ability. And something we saw with Rob Edwards at Forest Green Rovers was that he likes one of his centre-backs to be able to carry the ball. And I quite like what I see from Harding in that sense. He's good defensively, he's still strong, he's athletic, he reads the game well, but he's able to travel with the ball and offer you something a little bit from centre-back and allowing us to, again, have a little bit of fluidity, a little bit of movement and try and find space in areas that we wouldn't normally. I'd trust someone like that much more than one of the more combative kind of central centre-backs that we have in the likes of Akong, Siriata, etc. So having someone like that would be interesting. Yes, that's my first one, is Wes Harding. But out of the ones I'm going to talk about here, he would be the one I perhaps have the most concern about stepping up to the level and playing at the level we wanted to play. But he does fit. He has some traits that I do like. Wing back, I mean, we've talked about him to death, honestly, but I still think Kane Wilson is the interesting one to look at. Forest Green Rovers player, free agent, their player of the year. League Two Player of the Year last year as well. He's someone that can come in and know what's expected of him right away. Obviously, a good relationship with Rob Edwards, and someone that you'd expect to be able to come in and perform. If they are going to be performing at a high level, obviously it's a pretty big step up, but that transition is eased by the comfort he has with the head coach, and I think it'd be a good fit. In terms of midfield. So this is a name that probably most of you will know, and it's maybe not the young kind of future prospect sort of player we normally would talk about. Obviously, a lot of the time the tendency is to look at players that are going to give you something in the future, whether that be potential and growth or sell-on fees, etc. But there's also an element, there's also a need for buying players that can help you now. Even when you're in a transitional process, you have to have players that can help bridge that kind of gap and allow you to move forward. Whilst there are younger players developing, waiting in the wings, getting more experience, you need to have those that can compete now. And I think someone that would be really useful for us would be Barry Bannon. He's been in the Championship for a long time, obviously been playing down in League One as well with Sheffield Wednesday, but we know what he is. He's a great progressor of the ball, comfortable in possession. We're going to be playing a new system. There's going to be a little bit of some teething issues, and having someone that's able to demand the ball, take the ball in awkward areas, find ways forward, find routes forward in difficult areas when we're not quite comfortable yet. Experience, and also set piece taking ability, something that we really need improvement on. Rob Edwards likes his set pieces. The Forest Green Rovers were quite adept in how they worked and operated in those forward attacking set pieces, and Barry Bannon could be absolutely crucial to that. He's 32 years old, turning 33. He's not the best athlete, of course, but I think he'd be a real asset. I think he'd be someone that would really help this team move forward. And is it likely? Probably not, but I would be very happy to see someone like that. And then striker. This is a bit of a tough one. We've talked about a few options there, and I mean, if we're going on realistic signings, which we're trying to stick to, Lucas Joao is someone that I would say, kind of one of the leading candidates for that position. But looking in League One, it kind of maybe seemed like a bit of an easy grab at second top goal scorer Ryan Stewart from Sunderland. 26 goals in the league last season, so joint top scorer of Keane. He's someone that, yes, scores goals, but I think the real thing for me is his ability to press off the ball, athleticism. He can chase down defenders, he can make things difficult, and also the same thing we were talking about Keane earlier, having that flexibility and positioning to be able to move deeper in midfield. He can play from a late run. He can attack the balls that come into the box, whether that be high or low. He's just someone that would give us a lot of variety in attack, and I think we need that variety. Doesn't hurt, of course, he scored 26 goals, but I think when we look at the players coming up a division, we're not necessarily expecting to reproduce that level of output, but it's the other traits that he has that fits that Rob Edwards style, and I think it'd be useful for us. There's a few names. How realistic they are, up for debate. It's very hard to tell with Watford, but we try. Okay, so thanks for that question, Matt. Next from Chris. Do you think Hungbo Pollock, after successful loans, could repeat this at Watford? Yeah, it's a good question. It's difficult to know. I mean, I think Hungbo did very well last season. Obviously, he picked up a lot of awards out on loan. Coming back, the question is, does he fit the team? We're most likely not going to be playing with wingers. Could he potentially play at wing back? Maybe. He might be seen there, especially with our right back options still quite uncertain. Wing back options uncertain. Maybe able to see something he likes from there and give him the opportunity. I wouldn't rule him out, but he's also definitely not someone you come in and say, perfect fit. Had we had the coach that plays with wingers, yeah, I think you've got an opportunity for him to be around the squad and have that chance. But given the situation, given the squad that we have and the style we're most likely going to kind of play with, it could go really either way. I think it's an opportunity for Hungbo still to take and look to progress, but it's going to be learning something new. And after a season of success that he's had, I'm sure he wants just to be able to come in and try and replicate that success. But it's going to be a season of change for him again. It's really up to Hungbo and how much Joseph Hungbo and how much he can take the opportunity. But I think the option will be there for him. I think he'll be given a fair crack in pre-season, and that's the chance. So similar kind of for Pollock as well. Difference is a little bit more of a kind of a plug and play, good fit situation. Pollock's going to be most likely looking at that centre back position. That's what he's going to be vying for. Ahead of him right now, you're looking at Sirialta, Troost-Ekong, perhaps even Craig Cathcart, players that are going to be occupying that central spot. I don't think Pollock is, at this point, the player you want to have in those outside spots. He's not quite got the turn. He's not quite got the use of the ball yet. Not saying he can't do it, but right now, I think if you're bringing a player up a level, it's a big ask, especially if we are trying to be competing towards the top end of the table. It's a big ask for him to come in and play in a really difficult new position. The outside centre-back role is so different, but the central position, it could be an option. If we were to move on from one of Troost-Ekong or Sirialta, then he could be second in line, he could be backup, he could be a guy that gives you some minutes. He could even earn that starting spot. But they're definitely not players that will come back in and I'd say are nailed on to start. It's not like someone we know they've had such a good season they've come in. Yes, they've both done well respectively at their loans. They've both done very well. But we are kind of competing or hoping to compete towards that top end of the table. I think best case scenario for them is start off as squad players and potentially kind of work their way in. But there's promise for both of those guys. So they're definitely the right two to pick out. So thanks for that question, Chris. Next from Paul, a lot of Championship or lower league players have been mentioned as ones we'd like to see with us next season. If that were to happen, could they step up to Prem level should we get promoted. Now, this is obviously a case-by-case basis. I think, I don't see why not. I think, again, this kind of goes back to the principles we talked about, is fit. And if we could get players that fit, that's when you have the best opportunity to allow them to thrive in a new higher level should we get promoted. If we can have that consistency and they get comfortable within those positions, within their roles, then they can exceed. You can have a team that exceeds what its potential, which it can play at a higher level because of that. And there's also the ability to step up and learn and develop. And there's always, a lot of these gaps between the divisions is smaller than you may think. There are lots of kind of factors that play a part, and given the right environment, then there's no reason why they couldn't. So I think as long as we're signing the right targets, then some of them we might be bringing in a much kind of shorter capacity. Someone like Will Keane, for example, you're most likely bringing him in, if you were to do so, for a championship player that you're expecting to be kind of productive and helping the championship. And then should you get promoted, you might be looking elsewhere or kind of readjusting and going in some different directions with him. But if you look at these younger players, we mentioned Kane Wilson, for example, these are players you're hopeful that are able to continue their development and be someone that can contribute at the top. We've definitely taken championship players into the Premier League and had some success previously, so if we can do that again with some players from League 1, League 2 even, if the potential's there, then there's 100% no reason why not. It's obviously could be more of a risk, but then you have some control when you're harbouring the development, you're seeing the player, you can make that decision from a better standpoint if you've had them for a couple of years. And I think we have to kind of look at them case by case, but there's no reason why not. Duncan, how many players do you think we're aiming to sign? Do you think we'll be kept? Oh, sorry. How many do you think will be kept for this season from Hungbo, Phillips, Queener, Pollock, and now Scott Holding? Well, I'd say Scott Holding's most likely going to 23s. I don't think we'll see him in the first team squad outside of pre-season if he's to be involved there. Queener. We don't know on Queener. I think we still have to give Edwards a chance to have a proper look at him and make that decision. If I had to go with my gut on this one, I'd say 3 at most, potentially 2, most likely 2. I think Hungbo and Pollock will actually no. It's tough. I think Pollock will be around. I think Pollock will be in the squad. I think he'll be a backup. Hungbo and Queener, I'm not entirely sure on. Hungbo's we just kind of touched. I won't rehash because we just touched on it. But Hungbo, I think for me, the question is the position. If it's not needed, do we see his development being better suited out on loan in an area where he can play more often? If we are serious about him being integrated into this team and we are serious about him as a prospect, then we have to give him the opportunity to stay around and learn that new position, try and play in that new position, give him opportunities. If we're just looking at him as a potentially sellable asset in the future, someone that, and I'm not saying for a big fee, but if we just don't see him fitting here, then we loan him and try and raise his value more and potentially sell. I don't see him being sold this season. Domingos Queener is still one where he's struggled. He wasn't involved at Fulham very much at all. Obviously, he had that second part of the season. He was out on loan. He was more successful in the second half at Barnsley. So perhaps we view him as someone with a little bit more potential for the squad now. He's obviously signed a new contract before he went on loan to Fulham as well, so we are more committed to him. I think it'll be a little bit harder to find a club for him. Obviously, the loan is always an option, but I do think there's an opportunity for Redbirds to actually appreciate what Queener brings in this team. So I'm just going to go out there and say 3. I think Hungbo, Queener, and Pollock will be around. I think Phillips and Holding are destined for the under-23s. Yeah, thanks for the question, Duncan. Gary, next. I guess this is actually the last question. I think we need to address the lack of a main number 9 for next season. Agreed. In previous years, Deeney has shipped in with goals, and the club supported him with Vidra Agalo. Assuming we don't have Dennis Sarr, do we go ahead with King, Chucho, Pedro? Is that enough to challenge? Who else? Yeah, I mean, this is we've covered a few positions here and discussed a few positions, but striker is definitely one that has to be addressed. And look, I don't think King's going to be here next year, so you're left with Chucho and Pedro, and there've been question marks about those two being with us next season as well. So I think 1 or 2, I'd say 2 probably have to come in, and asking for a 20. Look, Deeney scored a lot of goals in the season before we got promoted, and they did supplement him well. I mean, Gallo and Deeney were both in the 20s when the 20 goal mark when they went up together, as well as kind of contributing with Vidra, Forestieri even that season as well. I don't think we would necessarily be doing that. There is obviously a precedent for clubs going up with top goal scorers as such, as you'd expect, but I don't think you have to go that route. Obviously, it's useful to have a striker that's scoring 20 plus goals, but if you are playing with two strikers, you can spread that offensive workload a little bit. I think they'll be expecting more of a return from Pedro in the Championship this season, looking at that kind of 15 goal mark, I'd say. And then around him supporting, you can spread the goals around a little bit if you have some threat from midfield too. I think the importance for me is, I think Edwards' system requires a little bit more from the strikers than perhaps we did in previous spells in the Championship in regards to Slavisa Djukanovic's time. The strikers were very much strikers. They're involved in interplay, but you wanted them to be in the box, wanted them to be threats. We might be a little bit more patient under Edwards in possession. Obviously, off possession, you have to be working a little bit harder because we'll be winning the ball back quicker. So you might be looking at some different traits from these players. We have to look at their work off the ball as well, and we're discussing these forwards. And that might be one of the only, not negatives, but areas you have to kind of look into a little bit more when we're talking about Will Keane and Lucas Joao, is their work rate off the ball. Are they able to be that player for Edwards in terms of winning the ball back, making turnovers, being smart out of possession? I think they could be, but my point is there's lots of elements to consider aside from just goal scoring ability. So whilst I think you're definitely right, we do need to bring players in, probably two, to make it enough, because quite simply it's not right now. Even if King was to stay, I still think we need another one, because I don't think King, Chucho and Pedro is enough for two positions over the course of that season. I think we need more. So I believe that covers the questions. If I did miss anything, I'm pretty sure I wasn't sent anything through direct message or anything. So if I haven't missed anything, let me know and I'll be sure to get to it next time. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers it all. So yeah, a little bit quicker this week, I think. And we'll be back shortly to discuss anything that comes up. I think there was talk or discussion of a interview with Rob Edwards today. Today being Wednesday. If there is anything to discuss on that, if it does even come out, then yeah, I'll be back to talk about that. And if anything happens in the transfer market, any news comes out, come back to the channel. I'll update you on Twitter, and obviously subscribe and like if you want to find out from YouTube. If you did like the video, leave a like. If you didn't, don't leave a like. It'd be nice if you came back and watched again. So yeah, thanks for watching. Appreciate it, and appreciate the feedback that I've gotten over the last couple of weeks. I think some of you have enjoyed these in conjunction with the podcast too. And yeah, I'm going to keep doing them. So I'll see you next time.